The twin moons of Proxima Centauri B cast a pale blue glow across the research station's dome. Inside, Talia Voss adjusted her hydroponic lighting system, muttering quiet encouragement to a row of fragile alien seedlings. "Come on, little ones," she whispered, checking moisture levels. "You're a long way from home, but so am I." 3 years into her 5-year assignment as lead botanist at Outpost Helios, Talia had grown accustomed to talking to her plants. The research station, designed to house 12, now accommodated only her after budget cuts had forced the evacuation of non-essential personnel 6 months ago. Essential personnel. Talia smiled wryly at the thought. Her work cataloging and studying the unique flora of this habitable exoplanet was deemed important enough to leave her here alone, but not important enough to maintain proper staffing levels. A gentle chime from her wrist communicator broke the silence. Atmospheric anomaly detected. Unknown craft entering planetary atmosphere on trajectory Alpha 73. Talia frowned. The quarterly supply drop wasn't scheduled for another 3 weeks. She moved to the monitoring station, brushing auburn hair from her eyes as she studied the readout. Computer, identify incoming vessel. Unable to identify. Design parameters do not match known human or allied species configurations. Her heart skipped. First contact situations were strictly regulated by the Interstellar Exploration Commission. A solo botanist at a remote research station wasn't authorized, or prepared, to handle such an encounter. The ground beneath her feet trembled slightly, followed by a distant boom. Whatever it was had landed, or crashed, nearby. Protocol dictated she should lock down the station and send an emergency burst transmission to Earth. 3 days minimum before anyone would receive it, another week before any response. Computer, enhance visual on crash site. The monitor displayed thermal imagery of a small craft, now partially embedded in the crimson soil of the valley floor about 2 kilometers from her position. A heat signature moved outside the vessel, something alive. Talia bit her lip. Computer, condition of life form. Unknown species. Biorhythms indicate possible injury. She closed her eyes, weighing her options. Protocol versus basic decency. Rules versus compassion. Damn it, she muttered, already reaching for her field kit. Computer, maintain station security. I'm going to investigate. Talia pulled on her exosuit, designed to protect against Proxima's harsher atmospheric components while maintaining mobility. The planet was technically breathable for humans, but extended exposure caused respiratory irritation. She clipped her personal defense weapon to her belt, a standard-issue stunner she'd never had cause to use, and headed for the airlock. The trek across the valley took 30 minutes, the crash site growing more distinct with each step. As she approached, Talia slowed, caution finally catching up with her impulse to help. The ship was unlike anything in the human fleet, sleeker, with an iridescent hull that seemed to shift colors in the moonlight. It wasn't large, perhaps meant for a crew of 2 or 3, with one section clearly damaged from impact. Movement caught her eye, a figure limping away from the wreckage, then collapsing to the ground. Talia hesitated only a moment before rushing forward. As she reached the fallen figure, her breath caught. The alien was humanoid but clearly not human. Tall and lean with skin that shimmered with a faint purple luminescence. Where hair would be on a human head, this being had what looked like crystalline filaments that caught the moonlight in prismatic fragments. Its face, his face, she somehow knew instinctively, had features in roughly human arrangement, but with more pronounced angles and 2 sets of eyelids. Currently, all eyes were closed, and a viscous blue fluid seeped from a wound across his torso. "Hello," Talia said, kneeling beside him. "Can you understand me?" The alien's eyes fluttered open, brilliant amber with vertical pupils that contracted sharply at the sight of her. He spoke, the language unlike anything Talia had heard, melodic and complex. She shook her head. "I don't understand." The alien winced, then reached slowly toward his neck, touching what appeared to be a small device embedded there. After a moment of adjustment, he spoke again. Human, he said, the word accented but understandable. Dangerous, here. You should, go. You're injured, Talia replied, already opening her field kit. I need to help you. Others, following. His breathing was labored. Not, friendly. Talia glanced nervously at the sky. Who's following you? What's your name? Norin, he managed. I am. Linari. He grimaced in pain. Please, no time. Talia made a quick assessment of his injury. The cut was deep but had missed what she assumed were vital organs. The blue blood concerned her, she had no idea if human medical treatments would help or harm him. I need to get you to my station, she decided. Can you walk with assistance? Norin attempted to sit up, his crystalline filaments quivering with the effort. Try. She helped him to his feet, supporting his considerably taller frame as best she could. His body was surprisingly light despite his height. My ship, he said, gesturing weakly to the crashed vessel. Data core, must retrieve. We'll come back for it, Talia promised. First, we treat your wound. As they began the slow journey back to the research station, Talia felt the weight of questions pressing on her mind. Who was this Norin? What were Linari? Who was pursuing him, and why? The twin moons illuminated their path, casting double shadows before them on the russet soil. In the distance, her research station dome gleamed like a beacon. Not safe, Norin murmured as they walked. Bringing danger, to you. Let me worry about that, Talia replied, adjusting her grip to better support him. They were halfway back when Talia's communicator chimed again. Multiple atmospheric entries detected. 6 unknown vessels on approach vector. Norin stiffened beside her. They're here, he whispered, alarm evident despite the translation. The Morix hunters. Talia quickened their pace. We'll make it. You don't understand, Norin said, his amber eyes fixed on hers with startling intensity. They destroy everything, everyone, who helps their targets. Then we'd better not get caught, Talia replied, surprised by her own determination. After 3 years of isolation with only plants for company, she was suddenly thrust into what seemed like an interstellar conflict. Yet somehow, the weight of Norin against her side felt strangely right, as if the universe had aligned to bring them together. As they stumbled toward the station, now only half a kilometer away, the night sky bloomed with the fiery trails of descending ships. They're coming, Norin said unnecessarily, his voice tinged with despair. Talia tightened her grip around his waist. Then let them come. I'm not giving up on you, Norin of the Linari. Not when we've just met. A small smile crossed his alien features, and for a moment, the distance between their species seemed to vanish. You are, unlike others I have encountered, he said softly. The research station loomed ahead, their sanctuary against the approaching storm. First rule of botany, Talia replied with a grim smile. The most beautiful organisms are often the most resilient. Together, they crossed the threshold into the airlock as the first of the hunter ships breached the clouds directly above them. The airlock hissed shut behind them just as the first tremors from landing spacecraft vibrated through the station. Talia helped Norin to the medical bay, easing his tall frame onto the examination table. Under the harsh lights, his injuries looked worse. The gash across his torso had begun seeping that strange blue fluid again. Your physiology, she said, scanning him with a medical analyzer. I don't know if our treatments will help or harm you. Norin's vertical pupils contracted as he studied the readout over her shoulder. Similar enough, he managed, his translator device giving his words an ethereal quality. Carbon-based, protein structures analogous. You understand our biology? Talia asked, surprised. A weak smile crossed his angular features. Xenobiologist, by training. A fellow scientist, Talia said, returning the smile despite the tension coiling in her stomach. She selected a regenerative gel from her supplies. This promotes cellular repair in humans. Might sting. Norrin nodded, gripping the edge of the table as she applied the translucent substance to his wound. His crystalline filaments rippled with what she guessed was pain, but he made no sound. The Morax, Talia said, working quickly, who are they? Why are they hunting you? Norrin's eyes, all four lids now fully open, fixed on hers. Mercenaries. Hired by Hegemony Corporations. I discovered something, they want buried. Beyond the station walls, the whine of approaching aircraft grew louder. Computer, Talia called out, Security Protocol Omega. Full lockdown. Acknowledged. Implementing station lockdown. Reinforced shields descended over windows and exterior doors. The main lighting switched to amber emergency mode. Won't stop them, Norrin said quietly. Just, slow them down. Talia finished bandaging his wound. Then we use that time wisely. Can you stand? With her assistance, Norrin rose shakily to his feet. His height, over 2 meters, was more apparent now that he stood upright. The crystalline filaments atop his head brushed the ceiling. Your station, he said, any defenses? It's a research facility, not a military outpost, Talia replied, leading him toward the central control room. But I've made some modifications. Norrin tilted his head, curiosity evident despite their dire situation. 3 years alone gives you time to tinker, she explained, her fingers flying across the command console. When they cut our staff but demanded the same research output, I automated everything. Including security. The monitor displayed 6 vessels surrounding the station perimeter. Humanoid figures in armored exosuits were emerging, carrying what were unmistakably weapons. 12 hostiles, Talia reported, her voice steadier than she felt. Armed for a small war. Expected worse, Norrin said. Small recovery team. More concerned with discretion than firepower. A harsh banging echoed through the dome, something heavy against the eastern airlock. They're trying to breach, Talia whispered. Norrin straightened, wincing slightly. Your modifications? Talia nodded, accessing a hidden command protocol. The station's environmental systems can be repurposed. On the security feed, they watched as the eastern section's external irrigation system activated, but instead of water, a thick, adhesive compound sprayed across the attackers attempting to breach the airlock. 3 Morax mercenaries found themselves immobilized, their armor coated in rapidly hardening resin. Impressive, Norrin said, genuine admiration in his voice. Experimental growth accelerant, Talia explained with a small smile. Works on plant cells, and apparently on combat armor. The remaining mercenaries regrouped, communicating via gestures before splitting into 3 teams to approach from different angles. They're adapting, Norrin observed. So will we, Talia replied, her earlier fear giving way to resolute focus. What exactly did you discover that made them hunt you across the stars? Norrin's expression darkened. Evidence of illegal terraforming. The hegemony is destroying living worlds, indigenous species, for profit. Like what Earth corporations did centuries ago, Talia murmured. Precisely. I was documenting, gathering evidence. He touched his neck where the translator device connected to his skin. Data stored here, and in my ship's core. The gravity of the situation settled over Talia. This wasn't just about helping an injured alien, she was now caught in the middle of an interstellar environmental crime. A sudden explosion rocked the western side of the dome. Alarms wailed as the integrity barrier activated. Breach in Section C, the computer announced dispassionately. Containment at 60%. They're inside, Talia realized. Norrin pushed himself fully upright, seeming to gather his strength. Need weapons. Botany labs aren't exactly arsenals, Talia said, grabbing her stunner. I have this and my wits. Sometimes, Norrin replied, wits are enough. As if to punctuate his statement, he reached toward a nearby terminal, his slender fingers working with surprising speed. The station's schematic appeared on screen. Ventilation system, he observed. Can we access environmental controls for each section? Talia nodded, understanding immediately. We can isolate Section C and alter the atmospheric mix. Precisely. Together they rerouted oxygen levels, flooding Section C with inert gas. On the security feed, they watched as two mercenaries staggered, then collapsed. Non-lethal, Talia noted with relief. For now, Norin agreed, though his tone suggested he held fewer compunctions about permanently eliminating their hunters. Security alerts continued to flash as the remaining mercenaries pressed their attack. The station, designed for scientific research rather than defense, groaned under the assault. We cannot stay, Norin said, studying the tactical display. They will breach, eventually. Where would we go? Talia asked. There's nothing out there but wilderness for hundreds of kilometers. Norin's vertical pupils dilated slightly. My people, we sense energy matrices. There is something to the north. Ancient. Powerful. The ruins, Talia breathed. We've detected unusual energy readings from there, but exploration was scheduled for next year's expedition. Another explosion shook the station, closer this time. No choice, Norin said. We must reach my ship, retrieve the data core, then find sanctuary in these ruins. Talia bit her lip, glancing around at the station, her home for 3 years, containing all her research, her work, her life. As if sensing her thoughts, Norin's hand found hers, 3 long fingers wrapping gently around her 5. The touch sent an unexpected warmth through her. Your work, he asked. I've backed up the critical data, she said, coming to a decision. She crossed to another terminal, initiating a download sequence. Give me 2 minutes to transfer my research to a portable drive. While the data transferred, Talia gathered emergency supplies, food, medical equipment, survival gear. Norin, despite his injury, helped by accessing the station's files on the surrounding terrain. There, he said, indicating a pathway that wound through the crimson valleys toward his crashed ship, then beyond to the mysterious ruins. Minimal exposure, natural cover. It's at least a day's journey on foot, Talia warned, shouldering her pack. Better than death here, Norin replied simply. The station shuddered again. Breach in Section A, the computer announced. Hostiles approaching Central Hub. Talia grabbed the completed data transfer and nodded to Norin. Ready? 1 moment. He tapped rapidly on the console. Setting final surprise. As they moved toward the maintenance tunnel that would allow them to bypass the approaching mercenaries, Norin explained. Program system, to cycle atmospheric pressure in all sections. We'll disorient them, buy us time. They crawled through the narrow tunnel, Norin wincing as the movement aggravated his wound. Behind them, shouts of confusion and alarm echoed as the station's environmental systems ran through rapid, disorienting changes. When they emerged outside through a concealed emergency exit, the twin moons had set, leaving the landscape bathed in the dim light of dawn. Proxima Centauri cast its reddish glow across the horizon. This way, Talia whispered, taking the lead. Stay low. They moved through the alien underbrush, weaving between the crimson vegetation that was both Talia's passion and now their cover. Behind them, the research station stood silhouetted against the morning sky, mercenary vessels surrounding it like predators cornering prey. Your home, Norin said quietly as they paused on a ridgeline overlooking the station. I am sorry. Talia watched as smoke began to rise from one section of the dome. The mercenaries were destroying it methodically, searching for them, or perhaps eliminating evidence of their attack. It was just a place, she said, though her voice caught slightly. Science is about discovery, not buildings. Norin's luminescent skin seemed to pulse faintly as he regarded her. You are remarkable for a human. Talia smiled despite everything. And you're surprisingly tolerable for an alien. A flash of amusement crossed his features, so human-like an expression that for a moment, the vast evolutionary distance between them seemed to vanish. We should continue, he said, gesturing toward the path ahead. My ship first, then the ruins. As they descended into the valley, leaving the burning research station behind, Talia felt a strange mixture of loss and excitement. In less than an hour, her ordered, solitary life had been completely upended. Yet as she watched Norrin moving ahead of her, his tall form navigating the alien landscape with natural grace despite his injury, she couldn't bring herself to regret opening that airlock. Something troubles you? Norrin asked, noticing her thoughtful expression when he turned back. Just wondering, Talia replied, catching up to him, how a xenobiologist ended up with mercenaries chasing him across the galaxy. Same way a botanist became a resistance fighter, he answered with that almost smile again. By refusing to look away when something mattered. Their eyes met in understanding, two scientists, different species, united by common purpose and growing respect. In the distance, a plume of smoke rose from Norrin's crashed ship, evidence the mercenaries had found it as well. We need to hurry, Talia said, picking up their pace. Together they moved deeper into the wilderness, strangers becoming allies, representatives of different worlds bound by circumstance and, perhaps, something more. Crimson foliage closed around them as they ventured deeper into the valley, the alien wilderness providing welcome cover from aerial surveillance. The distant smoke from both the research station and Norrin's ship served as grim reminders of the danger at their backs. They destroyed my ship, Norrin observed, his vertical pupils narrowing as he gazed at the plume on the horizon. They had circled back toward the crash site from a concealed approach, only to discover mercenaries systematically dismantling the vessel. The data core? Talia asked, adjusting her pack straps. Norrin touched the translator at his neck. Partial backup here. Most crucial evidence, but not complete. His crystalline filaments rippled in what she now recognized as frustration. Years of documentation, lost. Talia placed her hand on his arm, surprised at how natural the gesture felt despite the alien texture of his skin. I understand. My research. Different, he said, shaking his head. Your work builds knowledge. Mine was evidence of atrocities. They continued northward, following the route Norrin had plotted toward the ruins. The landscape grew increasingly bizarre as they traveled, the familiar red vegetation giving way to strange crystalline formations that reminded Talia of Norrin's head filaments. These formations, she said, pausing to examine one. They're silicon-based, not carbon. Almost like my people, Norrin finished for her. Noticed similarity immediately. Talia looked at him with renewed curiosity. Are the Lanari silicon-based? Partially, he explained as they walked. Evolutionary adaptation. Our homeworld orbits binary stars, intense radiation. Silicon structures in our biology provide protection. That's why your blood is blue, Talia realized. Copper-based, not iron. Norrin nodded, impressed by her deduction. You would make good xenobiologist. I almost went that route, she admitted. But there's something about plants, they're so resilient, yet completely different from animal life. The quiet intelligence of them. Not so different from Lanari philosophy, Norrin said. We believe in interconnection. Living beings as expressions of same universal energy. They paused at a small stream, its waters tinted purple by mineral deposits. While refilling their water containers through purification filters, Talia studied her companion more closely. Despite his alien appearance, she found herself drawn to his thoughtful nature and the gentleness that seemed at odds with his imposing height. Why did you become a xenobiologist? She asked as they rested briefly. Norrin's expression shifted, becoming more introspective. Always fascinated by diversity of life. Each species, unique solution to universal challenge of existence. He gestured toward the sky. When Lanari achieved space travel, I volunteered immediately. Wanted to document, preserve, celebrate biological diversity. Until you discovered the hegemony's terraforming operations, Talia surmised. Changed everything, he agreed solemnly. Saw entire ecosystems erased, indigenous species catalogued only as obstacles to development. His normally melodic voice hardened. Could not remain neutral observer. Talia nodded, understanding completely. Science without ethics is just technology. Precisely. Norin's amber eyes met hers, and something passed between them, recognition of kindred spirits despite their physiological differences. They continued their journey as Proxima Centauri climbed higher, its reddish light filtering through the canopy of crystal-flecked vegetation. The heat intensified, and Talia removed her outer jacket, noting how Norin seemed to grow more energetic in the direct sunlight. "Your species photosynthesizes?" she asked, observing the subtle luminescence that seemed to intensify across his purple skin. "Supplemental energy," he confirmed. "Primary nutrition still requires consumption, but can absorb solar radiation directly. Useful during long journeys." "Fascinating," Talia murmured. "Convergent evolution across star systems." Their scientific discussion was interrupted by a low, rumbling sound from beyond a nearby ridge. "What was that?" Talia whispered, instinctively crouching lower. Norin tilted his head, his sensory filaments quivering. "Local fauna. Large. Multiple organisms." They crept forward cautiously, peering over the ridge to discover a herd of massive hexapodal creatures grazing in a valley below. Each stood nearly 3 meters tall, with iridescent scaled hides and elaborate sensory crests. "Magnificent," Talia breathed. "I've catalogued smaller species, but never anything this size." "Apex herbivores," Norin observed. "Similar ecological niche to Earth's extinct proboscideans." Talia glanced at him, surprised. "You've studied Earth biology?" A flicker of what might have been embarrassment crossed his features. "Hobby of mine. Your world, particularly interesting case study in evolution. And here I thought you might have been researching us for invasion," she teased. Norin's expression became serious. "Lenari are not conquerors. We believe, all worlds have right to develop naturally." "I was joking," Talia said gently. "Ah." His vertical pupils widened slightly. "Still learning human humor." Their moment of connection was shattered by the distant whine of engines. Both flattened against the ground as a sleek black ship passed overhead, a Moric scout vessel. "They're extending the search pattern," Talia whispered. "We need to move faster." They skirted the valley of grazing giants, using the crystal formations for cover. By midday, the terrain began to change dramatically, the vegetation thinning as they entered a region dominated by towering spires of resonating crystal. Each step they took produced subtle harmonics, as if the ground itself were singing. "The ruins must be close," Talia said, consulting her portable mapping unit. "Energy readings are intensifying." Norin nodded, his expression growing increasingly thoughtful. "These formations, familiar somehow." They crested a final ridge and both stopped, awestruck. Before them lay a vast structure, or what remained of one, semicircular in design with impossibly tall spires that seemed to capture and refract the light of Proxima Centauri. What had appeared from satellite imagery to be weathered stone was actually crystalline material similar to the formations they'd been passing, but arranged with obvious intelligence and purpose. "It's beautiful," Talia whispered. Norin stood motionless beside her, his filaments fully extended and vibrating slightly. "I know this place," he said, his voice barely audible through the translator. "What?" Talia turned to him in surprise. "How is that possible?" "Not memory, deeper." His hand moved unconsciously to touch one of his head filaments. "Genetic memory perhaps. These patterns, architecture." He pointed to symbols etched into the nearest crystal column. "Can read this. Ancient Lenari script." Talia's scientific mind raced with implications. You're saying your people built this? But that's impossible, the ruins predate human arrival on this planet by at least 10,000 years. Not impossible, Norin said quietly. Lenari achieved space travel 20,000 years ago. The revelation hung between them as they carefully approached the entrance to the massive structure. The mercenaries temporarily forgotten, Talia watched in fascination as Norin traced his slender fingers over the inscriptions. What does it say? She asked. Sanctuary of Convergence, he translated. Place where separated paths rejoin. As they stepped through the massive archway, the interior illuminated in response to their presence, not with artificial lighting but with a bioluminescent reaction from the crystal itself. The vast chamber beyond was a cathedral-like space with a domed ceiling that seemed to capture the stars even in daylight. It's responding to you, Talia observed as more systems activated with Norin's proximity. In the center of the chamber stood what appeared to be a control console, crafted from the same living crystal as the rest of the structure. Norin approached it reverently, his filaments now glowing with the same resonant frequency as the building itself. This was a research outpost, he said with growing certainty as he studied the controls. Established to monitor evolutionary development of early life on this world. Your people were here before mine even learned to make fire, Talia said, awed by the implications. Why did they leave? Norin's expression shifted to one of concentration as he interfaced with the ancient system. According to these records, devastating solar event. Forced evacuation. As he connected more deeply with the outpost systems, the entire chamber transformed. Holographic displays activated, showing star charts, biological specimens, and data that spanned millennia. They planned to return, Norin continued, absorbed in the information flow. But interstellar cataclysm disrupted space lanes. Connection lost. Talia walked slowly around the chamber, marveling at the sophisticated technology that functioned perfectly after thousands of years. And now you've returned, completely by accident. Perhaps not accident, Norin said softly. He turned to her, his amber eyes luminous in the crystal-refracted light. Lenari believe in cosmic symmetry. Patterns that repeat across time and space. Like what? Like finding you, he said simply. Human scientist with courage to help stranger. To stand against injustice. The directness of his gaze made Talia's heart race unexpectedly. Despite the alienness of his features, she found herself drawn to the intelligence and compassion she saw there. The Morix will eventually track us here, she said, breaking the moment. Can we use any of this technology to defend ourselves? Norin turned back to the console. This facility was designed for research, not war. But his fingers danced across the crystalline interface. Defense systems exist. Primarily environmental controls. As they explored further into the structure, Talia discovered what appeared to be living quarters, spaces designed for long-term habitation, complete with nutrient production systems that, remarkably, still functioned. We could survive here, she realized. At least for a while. Norin joined her, ducking his head slightly under a lower archway. If necessary. But cannot hide forever. He touched his translator device. Evidence still needs to reach Galactic Council. Talia sat on one of the crystalline benches, suddenly overwhelmed by the day's events. I've lost my home, my research station, everything I've worked for. Norin settled beside her, his tall frame folding gracefully. After a moment's hesitation, he placed his three-fingered hand over hers. Not everything, he said quietly. Knowledge remains. Purpose remains. The warmth of his touch surprised her. She'd expected his skin to feel cold or crystalline, but instead found it pleasantly warm, with a subtle vibration that reminded her of purring. It's strange, she said, looking up at him. 24 hours ago, I didn't know other intelligent species even existed in our sector. Now I'm hiding in an ancient alien outpost with one. Life, unpredictable, Norin agreed, his lips curving in what she now recognized as his version of a smile. If we survive this, Talia found herself saying, "What happens next?" "You return to your people, I to mine." Norin's filaments rippled thoughtfully. "Perhaps. Or perhaps." He seemed to struggle for words, even through the translator. "Paths that once diverged may converge again." The double meaning wasn't lost on Talia. A day ago, the idea of connection with a being from another world would have seemed absurd. Now, sitting beside Norin in the glow of ancient crystal technology, it felt like the most natural thing in the universe. Their moment of quiet understanding was shattered by a distant alarm, one of the perimeter sensors Norin had activated. "They've found us," Talia said, jumping to her feet. Norin moved swiftly to the main control chamber, accessing the outpost's surveillance system. Outside, 3 Morix vessels were landing at strategic points around the ruins. 9 mercenaries, he counted. Heavily armed. "What do we do?" Norin's expression hardened with resolve. "We fight. Not just for ourselves, for all worlds threatened by hegemony." As they prepared to make their stand, Talia realized that something fundamental had shifted within her. This alien, this person, had somehow become more important to her than she could have imagined possible. "Norin," she said, gathering her courage. "If we don't survive this." He turned to her, his amber eyes meeting hers. "We will. But if we don't," she persisted, "I want you to know that meeting you has been worth everything that's happened." Norin's filaments glowed brighter, his luminescent skin pulsing with what she now recognized as emotion. "In Lenari tradition," he said, his melodic voice soft through the translator, "when two souls recognize each other across the void of space and time, it is called Kalenden, convergence of cosmic paths." He reached out, gently touching her cheek with 3 slender fingers. "No matter what comes next, Talia Voss, our paths have converged. This cannot be undone." The distant sound of weapons fire echoed through the crystal chambers as the mercenaries began their assault. But in that moment, standing in the glow of ancient technology with an alien whose touch felt like coming home, Talia wasn't afraid. Whatever happened next, her universe had expanded irreversibly, and her heart along with it.